the music alone was just everything. So thank you. This is just, I think I'm getting as much from this right now as I'm about to give. um, yeah, so thanks for those who are sticking around for these. I think we have what, Jane, 10, 15 minutes? Is that what it is? Give or take. You're on mute. I don't hear you.
15 minutes or so. We should be off by 12. So leave some time
Yeah.
for questions.
Okay.
Go for
Yeah.
it.
Because got to be ready for worship in Spanish.
Right. So I'm just gonna jump on in here with like a super brief recap of like what 2020 was for us, and then I'm gonna move into kind of where our primary focus is, which is around the Breathe Act. Some of you may have already heard a little bit about the Breathe Act. I have a super brief presentation I could share on it. There's also a 4-minute video I may share towards the end. And we can talk about the ways in which, through a Q&A, the ways in which you all think that you could engage in this for 2021.
Dawn, you're now co-host, so if you want to share, you're good to go.
Great, super. All right, when we get there. Thanks, Nancy. So, yeah, oh my goodness, 2020, right? I feel like we're in like 2020 extended right now. So like we entered in the primary elections with our odd council districts, right? And so I'm just diving in here, for our core BLM team, a lot of us live in the second district. And, we had Cindy Allen and we had Robert Fox, who were kind of the top contenders after the primaries. But we had what was critical in that is we had the Police Officers Association who was pushing their candidate, right? We also had the Police Officer Association who was going hard in collaboration with other candidates in the was Al Austin, 8th or 9th, I'm not thinking clearly, 8th district, against Tanua Thrash, right? So these police officer associations or fraternal orders of police across the country are extremely, powerful forces, lobbying forces, political forces behind the departments that are the hands of the state when we're thinking about state violence, systemic, institutional, white supremacist violence. We know that they're there. Funny how all these incidents is that the Capitol has like given folks an extra physical visual of what some of that looks like. Crazy. All right. Right, so we had the primaries. We were already working in collaboration with all of our other community partners around the People's Budget. You all are probably very much familiar with the People's Budget. We were already working on that. George Floyd happens, right? How silly our Long Beach department is to condemn police violence that's happening across the country, or to condemn white supremacist vigilante violence against Ahmaud Arbery in Atlanta, when we have a very same or similar incident right here in Lakewood, in a community where it is well known that is a pretty safe haven for law enforcement members to live, right? The Lakewood Village area is an area where a lot of law enforcement investigators, LAPD, Sheriff, Long Beach PD live. And funny that, very few wanted to lift a finger in law enforcement to help find the killer of Frederick Taft. But our department will condemn this violence in other places and not deal with its own backyard. It's a shame. So we went through all of that, right? The uprisings were just as much about the families who have been killed by police here in Long Beach. You all have probably heard a lot of their names: Sante Jordan, Tyler Woods, Lionel Gibson, Faraz Marad, so many. And so the uprisings were just as much about the violence here, not just afar, but in our own backyards. Which, so through those uprisings pushed us into a harder conversation, not just about a people's budget, but one where we're divesting from violent police departments and reinvesting in community care. There is so much work that departments across the country, not just here in Long Beach, are claiming in order to buffer their budgets and of work that don't necessarily belong to them, right? These are jobs for individuals who have gone to school 2, 4, 6, 8 years to do to provide the kind of community care that police departments are offering. Um, that work belongs to folks who are trained and equipped and culturally sensitive and not work that necessarily needs to be held by folks who are not trained in those areas, rather trained to kill. It doesn't work, right? We've seen over and over. I don't know if you saw the most recent in Texas, where a man, a pastor, in fact, in Texas, had apparently some mental health issues. Family called, requested mental health support. Here come the police. The man was killed. We see it over and over. So we have to shift, we have to divest from funding these departments in a way that reinvests resources and jobs into community care. That's what defund the police meant and still means, right? Then of course the city responds with their framework for reconciliation, and you had, almost every title in the city come out and say, we recognize, these racial inequities and disparities. We recognize the harm done systemically, institutionally, and those impacts specifically on Black people here in this city, and also by extension, people of color, whether it be in our housing systems, our health systems, our education system, political system, all of our systems. We know that, the foundation that those systems were built on. And so all these apologies were made, except from those who actually have been committing the harm, the police themselves. How about that, right? And we go through that process. There's 40 stakeholders who were a part of this process, and it was tough. Let me tell you, it was extremely challenging. You had they went through a process to listen to the city during these uprisings, to listen to the community, during these uprisings about what folks want to see happen, what the concerns are, and repeatedly what our local government heard as documented by an analysis who they hired from Cal State Long Beach was around centering Black lives, was around defunding the police. And what happened in this reconciliation process, those who are familiar with Real Truth and Reconciliation probably see that this was not that full process, right? But in this process, they listened to the community, the analyst puts together the report, and at the end of the process, in comes representatives, I'll say, of the police department who were saying, no, we don't want defund, those words, defund the police, to be included in this report. And we're like, what? Right? Because this was the process to hear from the community. You heard from the community. You're presenting a report to report back what the community said. And if that's what the community said, that's what you should be reporting back, right? Not allowing for police chiefs and or whoever else from these departments and or their unions come in to dictate or change words to what the community said. It is infuriating. Like, it personally has me not wanting to participate in dealing with this city at all. I think these are spaces where some of you who are interested and or have relationships with are moved to correct those wrongs, are recognize the need to ensure that we're taking this opportunity to do the real work and not just lip service, have the tough conversations, make the difficult decisions. This is the moment for that. And I just think those with access, those with resources, those with the relationships, these are moments, I think, for you all to be invited to explore how you want to use those privileges to, move in a more vigorous, intentional way. So, right, and then we had elections come up, right, and we all know what happened there. So that was last year. It was a whole lot for us. And in fact, personally, after the elections, in the month of December, I had some other personal experiences going on that for me made me want to just take a few steps back. Take a few steps back, have some reflection time, take some downtime, right? There's COVID, I had family stuff, right? I had work stuff, my business suffered. My job was, the program I worked for at UCLA was ended after 6 years. It's been a lot, right? And so I, I don't I don't want to engage with the city in the same ways. So I started this nonprofit called Black Agency to do the building work, the work in the Black community to coordinate all the work that exists just in our everyday lives, but in Black community to connect information, resources, to build on, um, every issue and efforts around youth and education, Black health, economic development, land use and access, housing, decriminalization work, cultural work, right? Just to coordinate the 11 to 12% of Black people who are left here in this city. So that's that. I'll transition us to where we are right now. One of the things that we want to focus on in order to deepen an investment in building up, correcting these harms, real reconciliation and building up Black community is with the Breathe Act. And I'm gonna pull up, I'll share here. I'm gonna walk through this presentation super quick. I'm gonna share a link in the chat box where you can also see a little description of it, and then I'll share a 4-minute video, and then we should have time for the Q&A. Yeah, I think this should work. All right, let me pull up these slides. Oh, I think I should have shared first. There we go. I hope, let me make this a little bigger so that you can see this. So, oh. So the Breathe Act was created out of the Movement for Black Lives. The Movement for Black Lives is a very broad movement space for predominantly base building or Black-led base building organizations. So organizations that have, some kind of membership base, like Black Lives Matter. So Black Lives Matter as a global network is a part of the broader movement for Black lives. So how did we get here? What's the Breathe Act? What does the act do? This was literally like, it took years to develop this vision for Black lives, the recent uprisings, right? COVID exposing the disproportionate impacts on Black and Brown communities across the US that we know already existed. COVID kind of exacerbated those challenges. And then elected officials and policymakers' failure to introduce federal legislation that meets the moment, urgency, and depth of the crisis facing our people. And so what is it? So the M4BL, Movement for Black Lives federal bill that introduces a bold new vision for community safety that ends mass incarceration and criminalization while channeling federal dollars into non-punitive, public safety focused interventions, as well as the educational, health, and other social investments that communities need. It's created by M4BL. Right, it really uplifts Invest, Divest, which I touched on a moment ago that we worked on all last year. And so there are 4 phases to it. I'll drop a link to some of this in a moment, but so step one, divest federal resources from incarceration and policing in federal criminal legal system harms. Step two, invest in new approaches to community safety, utilizing funding incentives for states, tribal, and local jurisdictions. Step three, allocate new funding to build healthy, sustainable, and equitable communities for all people. Step four, hold political leaders accountable and enhance self-determination of Black communities. This is the first section. A little bit of a breakdown for it is to defund and terminate the federal programs and agencies that fuel the carceral system, make policy recommendations to reduce the Department of Defense's budget, and enact federal legal system policy changes that decriminalize and shrink mass incarceration in the US. Section 2 is a little more lengthy. Reimagining public safety grant program, a matching grant program, a just communities program. I'm going to drop the link in the chat. I want to save some time for Q&A here. Yeah, I'm just going to send you the link and you can look through some more of the details here. Section 4, require Congress to acknowledge and address the lasting harms that it's caused, specifically through reparations programs like HR 40. So yeah, there's that. I'm going to stop sharing this. I'm going to grab a link for you. One moment. And, oh, yeah, I'm not still sharing screen. There's that link. I'll save the video for the end. It's about 4 minutes. I'll save it for the end, Jane, and we can like open up a little bit of Q&A here. You're talking, I don't hear you.
Folks with questions. You all aren't shy, and time is short.
I like what Byron just wrote in the chat. Byron, would you say that out loud? Where are you? There he is.
Oh yeah, I see that. Yeah, Byron, where is he?
Right there, amazing donor, he says. Judith McBride, it says.
You want to say more, Byron?
Okay, we ready? I've come to believe that this constant arguing about we got good cops and some bad ones and we're not really racist. I think it's evident that the racists, and even if they haven't, that they need to prove that they're anti-racist. They need to show it. They need to show it in their policies. They need to show it in their personnel stuff. And I think they need, from our side, from the outside, they need to be confronted with that issue and not engage in the argument of if then. Just show us you're not. Just commit to being anti-racist. And I think one could demand that of them, independent of the defund the police and all the other issues. It seems to me that they need to look at their personnel. They need to, okay, if 80% of your cops are good, then get rid of the 20, and train and have a policy against it. And show us that you are, instead of quibbling about make us prove it. That's my position these days, anyhow.
Yeah, thank you. I also like that you included this also going for the POAs, because I think that at the root of these police officer associations, these fraternal orders of police, Los Angeles, it's ALAD, Los Angeles Association for something for sheriff.
Some deputy sheriffs.
It's in the roots, right? So yeah, thank you for that, Byron.
Yeah, the kind of people that like to rise to leadership often are the wrong ones.
Mm.
How many bodies you got? We've all seen those coins they promoted all summer, right?
Yeah.
What's that? I don't know. Oh, I know, yeah. Okay. Anyhow, I'm done. That's a simple message.
So we've got a question from Cecilia.
Yeah, it's basically is the best way to support BLM Long Beach to sign up as a supporter of the Breathe Act. I'm no longer on Facebook. And I know for a while, Black Lives Matter Long Beach was communicating primarily by Facebook. So I would just like to know if there are other options. Thank you.
Thank you, Cecilia. If you wanna, you can send it to me privately or just in the chat, drop your email. I will add you to our email list since you're particularly not on Facebook. And yeah, we do mostly communicate through all the socials. We aim to be better about using our email list. And so thank you, there it is. I'll add you to that. And I think the best way, yep, thank you. Yeah, feel free folks to drop your emails there and I'll try to copy those before we hang up here. I think the best ways, and considering it's 11:58 and I do want to show the 4-minute video, for folks to engage is, I appreciate what I heard through some of today's sermon was about more than the prayers and well wishes. And like, I think we're also a little bit further beyond the petitions and circulating memes and like things like that. And so I'm hopeful that, yes, in addition to all of those things, because all of those things help and are important, that we reach a little further. And what I mentioned a moment ago is to, do an assessment of where you are, Cecilia, yourself, and I invite this to others, of where you are, what your abilities are, even under COVID, whether it's helping make phone calls, whether it's helping write letters, whether I appreciate Byron's suggestion about this being independent of defund, right? Or independent of divest, invest, the fact that, then be anti-racist, right? If you feel this accusation about racism, and it's systemic, this also, just as a reminder, it isn't about individual officers, right? Folks talk about good folks on the force, but the system is not, the system itself isn't working. And so even those good guys have work to do, right, internally. And so think about those privileges, relationships, and how to leverage those, whether it be in the workplace, friendships, relationships with the city in any way, supporting, organizations financially to sustain the work that we do, all of those ways. I hope that answered your question, Cecilia.
We probably don't have time for the video, but if you either put in the chat and or send it to me, we will get it in the daily tomorrow so folks can have access.
Jane,
and
go
we'll
ahead.
also,
Jane, go ahead and show the video. It's okay. I'm working on the other computer, so it'll be fine right now. 4 minutes is good.
okay.
4 minutes is fine.
Okay. I just dropped it in there anyway. It's in Dropbox. Some folks may not have Dropbox, so may not be able to open it. I don't know if your tech person can maybe convert it into something else. But yeah, so thank you. I'll just say thank you now, and so we can exit after this video. As we're watching, I will copy these emails, and I appreciate spending the morning with you all. It's been good for me too. So, all right, I'll share the video now.
Alive. Breathe. To be alive, remain alive, breathe. To feel free of restraint, breathe. Is this what liberation tastes like? Breathe. Fresh air exposition, breathe. Rest after exertion. I can't breathe. It doesn't have to be like this. Imagine, what if Richard had been met with a tow truck in that parking lot instead of an armed police officer? You okay? Or what if Brianna and Ayana had slept peacefully through the night instead of being murdered in their beds? Or if a mental health professional had responded to the call about Kayla What if they would have just let Elijah dance? What if my brother Monty got the treatment he needed instead of a jail cell? We are the largest and most diverse movement in the history of the world, and we are determined to create a future in which we don't have to imagine. Let me show you how.
The BREATHE Act starts by ending federal funding of the police and moving to divert funds away from the punitive agencies like ICE and the DEA. No more tanks rolling through our city streets, no more children in cages, no more over-policing of Black and brown neighborhoods, life sentences over dime bags, no more wrongful convictions of innocent people while abusers with money are left to go free again and again and again. This system, designed only to punish and cage, is not keeping us safe. It is not working for us.
The BREATHE Act isn't only about defunding. In fact, that's just the beginning. Where are we going to put our money instead of police and prisons? By establishing federal incentives for cities and states, the next part of BREATHE allows communities to create new, non-carceral models of public safety on their own terms. These could be healing justice programs, violence and abuse interruption programs, or job opportunities for formerly incarcerated people like me. The BREATHE Act would allow these ideas to grow and expand.
So the thing that makes the BREATHE Act really exciting is that it goes beyond the scope of how we traditionally view public safety. It's important that the right person shows up in an emergency. And we also need to build infrastructure to ensure that means access to healthy food and good jobs that pay a living wage and cleaning up our neighborhoods that have been poisoned for generations. That means providing housing to families, children, and all of our people who've been living in tents and in cars and who've been sleeping on the streets. That means disrupting the school to prison pipeline and making sure that our children have access to quality schools that are nurturing, safe, and supportive. And that means economic innovation in communities, including piloting universal basic income programs.
Some of these names you know, many you don't. Each of these people died at the hands of our criminal legal system. They were loved, they were cherished, and their lives mattered. Their deaths have moved me and many others to fight with everything we have to end police violence and to make the BREATHE Act a reality. That's why BREATHE calls for reparations and accountability to the Black community and all those impacted by state violence. Repairing the harm done already is not a footnote, but an essential measure for progress. Finally, BREATHE includes provisions to enhance self-determination in Black communities by strengthening voting rights and ensuring that all Americans are able to have a voice in our democracy. In the words of the late, great John Lewis, let us walk together with extraordinary vision and go make some necessary good trouble.
There you go.
Thank you for, in the midst of stunningly busy days, juggling your lives, handing off responsibilities at a national level to be present locally. Your presence has been a gift among us, and we look forward to figuring ways that we can be allies and use what access and privilege we have as individuals in a community to make a difference. So thank you, Dawn.
You're welcome. Thank you, Jane. Thank you, everybody.
And now, unless you want to go to worship again, we should probably log off.
Have a good day, everybody.